What would you do if saving your younger sister's life meant marrying a man you'd never met? A man twice your age, from a world so different it might as well be another planet? Everyone told me I was throwing my life away, that I was naive, desperate, foolish. But sometimes love isn't about romance, it's about sacrifice. And sometimes, the person you marry out of necessity becomes the person you can't imagine living without. My name is Sophia Morales. I'm 24 years old, and this is the story of how I became the wife of a 52-year-old billionaire tech mogul, and how that impossible arrangement taught me what real love actually means. I grew up in a small apartment in the Bronx, New York, where the walls were so thin you could hear every argument, every crying baby, every life unfolding in the cramped spaces around us. My mother worked double shifts at a nursing home, coming home with swollen feet and a tired smile she'd force for me and my little sister, Lucia. My father left when Lucia was born, and we never heard from him again. He didn't leave a forwarding address, just debt and disappointment. Lucia was my everything. 12 years younger than me, she was born premature, and from the beginning, her health was fragile. She had a congenital heart defect that required constant monitoring, medications we could barely afford, and the looming promise of a surgery that would one day be unavoidable. The doctors said if we didn't act within the next year or two, her condition would deteriorate to the point of no return. I postponed my dreams to help my mother keep us afloat. I had been accepted to NYU for graphic design, a full scholarship that felt like a golden ticket out of poverty. But when the medical bills started piling up and my mother's hours were cut at work, I deferred my enrollment. One semester became 2, then 3. Eventually, I stopped thinking about college altogether. Instead, I found work at a high-end art gallery in Manhattan called the Silverton Collection. It was one of those pristine, intimidating spaces where every painting cost more than my entire year's rent, where the floor was polished marble that reflected your insecurities back at you, and where wealthy collectors spoke in hushed tones about investment pieces and emerging artists. I was hired as a gallery assistant, essentially a glorified receptionist who also handled paperwork, organized events, and made sure the champagne glasses were always full during openings. The pay was modest, but it was steady. And more importantly, it gave me access to a world I'd only seen in movies. I watched artists and collectors interact, studied how they spoke, how they moved through space with the kind of confidence that comes from never worrying about bills. I learned their language, their mannerisms. I learned how to be invisible when they wanted privacy and indispensable when they needed help. My routine was exhausting. I'd wake up at 5:30 a.m., help my mother get Lucia ready for school, take 2 trains and a bus to reach the gallery by 9 a.m., work until 6 or 7 p.m., then rush home to help with dinner, homework, and Lucia's medications. At night, after everyone was asleep, I'd sit at our tiny kitchen table and count bills, moving money from one envelope to another like a puzzle with no solution. Rent, utilities, groceries, medicine, hospital payments. The numbers never added up. I became an expert at stretching a dollar, at saying no to myself, so I could say yes to Lucia. I stopped buying new clothes. I walked instead of taking the subway when I could. I ate the free crackers and cheese at gallery events and called it dinner. My life wasn't mine anymore. It belonged to the people I loved and the debts that seemed to grow like weeds no matter how hard I tried to pull them out. The gallery's owner, Mr. Dominic Ashford, was a legend in the art world. At 52, he was a self-made tech billionaire who'd sold his software company for an unimaginable sum in his 30s and then pivoted to collecting art. He was known for having impeccable taste, for discovering artists before they became famous, and for being ruthlessly private about his personal life. He was tall, with silver gray hair that looked deliberate rather than aging, sharp blue eyes that seemed to assess everything in a single glance, and an air of quiet authority that made even the most arrogant collectors defer to him. He dressed in perfectly tailored suits that probably cost more than my mother made in 6 months, and he moved through the gallery like he owned not just the space, but the very air inside it. I barely interacted with him directly. He'd come in once or twice a week, speak briefly with the gallery director, examine new acquisitions, and leave. He didn't make small talk with the staff. He didn't need to. We were part of the infrastructure, like the climate control system or the security cameras. But over the past few months, I'd noticed something strange. His eyes would linger on me. Not in a creepy way. There was nothing predatory about it. It was more observant, analytical, like I was a painting he was trying to understand. Once, during a particularly chaotic gallery opening, a drunk guest knocked over a champagne tower. Glass shattered everywhere, and while everyone else froze, I grabbed towels and started cleaning immediately, directing other staff, calming the embarrassed guest, making sure no one stepped on shards. When I looked up, Dominic was watching me from across the room with an expression I couldn't read. Another time, I stayed late to reorganize the storage room, a task no one had asked me to do, but that desperately needed doing. When I finally left around midnight, exhausted and covered in dust, I found Dominic still in his office. He looked at me through the glass wall, nodded once, and went back to his work. I thought nothing of it. I was just doing my job, doing what needed to be done. I didn't realize I was being evaluated. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was in the middle of preparing for a private viewing when my phone buzzed in my pocket. I normally wouldn't answer during work hours, but something made me look at the screen. It was my mother. She never called during the day unless something was wrong. I excused myself and stepped into the back hallway, my heart already racing. Mija, my mother's voice was shaking, barely above a whisper. It's Lucia. We're at the hospital. You need to come now. The subway ride to Bronx Lebanon Hospital was the longest 40 minutes of my life. I kept trying to call back, but no one answered. My mind ran through every terrible possibility. Had Lucia collapsed at school? Was it her heart? Was she still breathing? When I finally burst through the emergency room doors, I found my mother in the waiting area, her face buried in her hands, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. A nurse was sitting beside her, one hand on her back. Mama! I ran to her, dropping to my knees. What happened? Where is she? My mother looked up, and I'd never seen her look so broken. She collapsed during gym class. Her heart. The doctors say it's failing faster than they expected. She needs the surgery now, Sophia. Not next year. Not in 6 months. Now. The nurse explained in a calm, clinical voice that Lucia had experienced a cardiac episode and was currently stabilized but in serious condition. The surgery she needed, a valve replacement, couldn't be postponed any longer. Without it, within weeks or months, her heart would simply give out. How much? I asked, my voice hollow. I already knew the answer would destroy us. The surgery, hospital stay, and follow-up care. We're looking at around $280,000, the nurse said gently. I know that's a difficult number to hear. Difficult. That was one word for it. Impossible was another. We had insurance, but it was bare minimum coverage with a massive deductible and a cap that wouldn't come close to covering a surgery this extensive. We'd been on a payment plan for years for Lucia's regular care, barely keeping our heads above water. This was an entirely different ocean, one we'd drown in. That night, after Lucia was moved to a regular room and finally sleeping, after my mother had cried herself into an exhausted silence, I sat in the hospital chapel. Not because I was particularly religious, but because I needed somewhere quiet to think. I did the math over and over, trying to find a solution that didn't exist. We could maybe scrape together $10,000 if we liquidated everything, sold our car, our furniture, asked every relative and friend we had. Medical credit cards existed, but the interest rates were predatory, and we'd never qualify for enough. Hospital charity programs had waiting lists months long. Crowdfunding might raise some money, but not nearly enough, not fast enough. I thought about the illegal options people whispered about, black market loans, borrowing from dangerous people who'd break your legs if you couldn't pay. I thought about stealing. I thought about running away and leaving this impossible problem behind. But every thought led back to the same image. Lucia's small face, her gap-toothed smile, the way she'd hug me and say, I love you, Sophie, every single night before bed. I would do anything for her. Anything. I just didn't know what anything looked like yet. I returned to work the next day because I had no choice. We needed every paycheck, every hour of work I could get. I moved through the gallery like a ghost, mechanically checking inventory, answering emails, setting up for an evening event. My mind was 1,000 miles away, trapped in that hospital room with Lucia. The gallery director noticed my distraction and pulled me aside. Sophia, are you all right? You seem not yourself. I forced a smile. Family emergency. I'm handling it. If you need time off. I can't afford time off, I said, more sharply than I intended. I'm sorry. I just need to keep working. She squeezed my shoulder sympathetically, but didn't push further. That evening, after the last visitors had left and I was preparing to close up, I noticed the light still on in Dominic Ashford's office. He rarely stayed this late. I figured he was working on some acquisition or business deal, none of my concern. I was gathering my things when his office door opened. Sophia. His voice was calm, measured. Could you come in for a moment? My stomach dropped. Was I being fired? Had I messed something up? I couldn't afford to lose this job, not now. Of course, Mr. Ashford, I said, following him into his office. The space was minimalist but elegant, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Manhattan skyline, a massive desk made of dark wood, and several pieces of modern art that probably cost more than a house. He gestured to a chair across from his desk. Please sit. I sat, my hands folded tightly in my lap, trying to keep them from shaking. He didn't sit immediately. Instead, he stood by the window, looking out at the city lights. I'm going to ask you something personal, and I want you to know you're not obligated to answer. But I've noticed you've been distressed these past few days. Is everything all right with your family? The question caught me off guard. How did he even know I had a family? We'd barely spoken beyond professional pleasantries. It's nothing I can't handle, I said carefully. Sophia. He turned to face me, his blue eyes sharp but not unkind. I've been in business long enough to recognize when someone is drowning. You've been an exemplary employee for 2 years. You're intelligent, hardworking, and you have integrity, which is rarer than you'd think in this world. So I'm going to ask again, and I'd appreciate honesty. What's wrong? Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was because he was the first person who'd asked me directly, without pity or judgment in their voice. Whatever the reason, the walls I'd built came crashing down. My little sister is dying, I heard myself say. She needs heart surgery. $280,000. We have nothing close to that. I've tried everything. I don't know what to do. The words hung in the air between us. I immediately regretted them. This was my boss. This wasn't his problem. I just made myself look unprofessional, desperate, weak. I'm sorry, I added quickly, standing up. I shouldn't have. Sit down, Sophia. Something in his tone made me obey. He walked to his desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a folder. He set it down in front of me, then finally sat in his chair across from me. I'm going to make you an offer, he said. And I need you to listen to the entire proposal before you react. Can you do that? I nodded, confused and wary. I will pay for your sister's surgery. All of it. I'll also establish a medical trust fund for her ongoing care for the rest of her life, and I'll clear whatever other debts your family is currently carrying. I'll set up college funds for both you and your sister. I'll provide your mother with a living allowance so she can retire from that nursing home job that's destroying her health. I stared at him, unable to process the words. It was too much. Too impossible. People didn't just offer that kind of money to strangers. Why? I whispered. Why would you do that? Because, he said calmly, I need something from you that money alone can't buy. I need a wife. The world tilted sideways. I'm sorry, what? I need you to marry me, Sophia. I laughed, a sharp, almost hysterical sound. This is a joke. This has to be a joke. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. He opened the folder and slid several documents toward me. Financial statements, legal contracts, medical care proposals, everything he'd just promised, laid out in precise legal language. I don't understand, I said, my voice shaking. You could marry anyone. Anyone. You're rich, you're successful, Why would you need to make a deal like this? Dominic leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled in front of him. Do you know what it's like to be a wealthy single man in his 50s, Sophia? Every person who approaches you wants something. A business connection. An investment. Access to your money or your network. I've been divorced twice. Both times to women who were excellent actresses, who played their parts perfectly until the ink dried on the marriage certificate. Then the real agendas came out. He stood and walked to the window again. I'm tired of games. I'm tired of pretense. I don't want passion or romance or whatever fantasy people sell themselves about marriage. I want honesty. I want someone who comes into this arrangement with clear terms, clear needs, and clear boundaries. But why me? Because I've watched you for 2 years, he said, turning to face me. I've seen how you work. You stay late without being asked. You solve problems before they become crises. You treat everyone with respect, from the janitor to the most pretentious collector. You don't gossip. You don't play politics. You're not here trying to network your way into a better position. You're here because you need to feed your family. He moved closer, but kept a respectful distance. When I researched your background, and yes, I did research you, I found no criminal record, no scandals, no red flags. Just a young woman who gave up her dreams to take care of her family. That kind of loyalty, that kind of character, is worth more than any prenuptial agreement. This is insane, I breathed. This is completely insane. Is it? He challenged. I'm offering you a solution to your problem. Your sister lives. Your family is secure. You can finish your degree. In exchange, you provide me with companionship, someone to attend events with, someone to share a home with, someone I can trust not to be plotting how to take half my fortune. What about? I couldn't even say the words. Sex, he said bluntly. Not unless you want it. I'm not looking for a trophy wife to parade around or a mistress to warm my bed. I'm looking for a partner. Someone intelligent to talk to. Someone who challenges me. Someone who reminds me there's more to life than board meetings and quarterly reports. He sat back down and slid the contract toward me. This is a 5-year agreement. After 5 years, if you want a divorce, you get one. No contest, no fighting. You'll receive a settlement of $10 million. Your sister's medical trust continues, and your family keeps everything I've already given them. Or, if we find that we work well together, we can renegotiate. The choice will be entirely yours. I looked down at the papers. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely focus on the words. I need an answer by tomorrow night, he said quietly. Your sister's surgery can't wait, and neither can this decision. I'm not trying to pressure you, Sophia. I'm trying to be honest about the timeline. Why tomorrow? I asked. Because I've already made preliminary arrangements with the hospital. If you say yes, your sister will be in surgery by the end of the week with the best cardiac surgeon on the East Coast. If you say no, I'll respect that decision, and this conversation never happened. I stood up on shaky legs, the folder clutched in my hands. I need to think. Of course. He walked me to the door, then paused. Sophia, for what it's worth, I don't think you're selling yourself. I think you're making an impossible choice in an impossible situation. There's no shame in that. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at our kitchen table, the contract spread out in front of me, reading every clause by the dim light of our old lamp. My mother had gone to bed hours ago, exhausted from another day at the hospital. Lucia was still there, being monitored, waiting for a miracle we couldn't afford. The contract was surprisingly straightforward. No hidden clauses, no traps I could see. Everything Dominic had promised was there in black and white, laid out with the precision of someone who'd done this before. Not the marriage part, but the negotiation part. Medical expenses covered. Debts cleared. Education funded. Living arrangements, separate bedrooms in his penthouse, with complete privacy. Public appearances, required for charity events and business functions, approximately twice a month. Personal autonomy, maintained. I could work, study, see friends and family freely. Duration, 5 years, with option to divorce without penalty. Settlement, $10 million upon completion or amicable termination. It read less like a marriage contract and more like a business partnership, which I supposed was exactly what it was. I thought about calling my mother, asking for her advice. But what would I say? Mom, a billionaire wants to marry me so my sister can live? She'd either think I was lying or having a breakdown. I thought about what people would say. Gold digger. Prostitute. Desperate. Pathetic. But then I thought about Lucia's face when she showed me her latest drawing. The way she'd hold my hand when she was scared. The way she trusted me to protect her. What was my pride worth? What was my dignity worth compared to her life? By the time the sun rose, painting our tiny kitchen in shades of pink and gold, I'd made my decision. I called Dominic's private number at exactly 8 a.m. I'll do it, I said before he could even say hello. I'll marry you. There was a pause. Are you certain? No, I said honestly. I'm terrified. I think this might be the craziest thing I've ever done. But I'm certain about my sister. I'm certain about my family. So yes, I'll do it. Then we have an agreement. His voice was calm, businesslike. I'll have my lawyers finalize the paperwork today. We'll need to meet this afternoon to sign everything. And Sophia? Yes. Thank you. I know you don't believe this yet, but I think we're going to be good for each other. By 6 p.m. that evening, I was sitting in a lawyer's office in Midtown, signing my name next to Dominic's. His hand was steady. Mine shook with every letter. By 9 p.m., the hospital had received a wire transfer for the full amount of Lucia's surgery, plus additional funds for a private room and the best post-operative care available. By 11 p.m., I was standing in my mother's kitchen, trying to explain what I'd just done. You did what? My mother stared at me like I'd grown a second head. I'm getting married, Mama. To my boss. He's going to pay for everything. Lucia's surgery, our debts, everything. Sophia, no. My mother grabbed my hands, her eyes filling with tears. No, Mija, you can't sell yourself like this. We'll find another way. There is no other way. My voice broke. She'll die, Mama. Lucia will die if we don't do this surgery now. You know that. The doctors told us. But not like this. Not by sacrificing yourself to some old rich man who. He's not like that, I said, surprising myself by defending him. He's different. This is a business arrangement. He needs a wife for appearances, and I need money for Lucia. It's simple. Nothing about this is simple. My mother was crying now, her hands clutching mine so tightly it hurt. What about love? What about your life? Your dreams? My dream is for Lucia to grow up, to graduate high school, to go to college, to fall in love, to have all the things I can give her if I just do this one thing. I pulled my mother into a hug. This is my choice, Mama. Please respect it. We cried together in that kitchen for a long time. The wedding happened so quickly it felt like a fever dream. Dominic arranged everything with the efficiency of someone orchestrating a business merger. We were married in a private ceremony at City Hall on a gray Wednesday morning, with only his lawyer and his longtime assistant as witnesses. I wore a simple cream dress I'd bought on sale from Macy's the day before. Dominic wore one of his perfectly tailored charcoal suits. The whole thing took less than 20 minutes. There were no flowers, no music, no tears of joy. Just signatures on official documents and the weight of a platinum wedding band on my finger that felt foreign and heavy, like it belonged to someone else's hand. You can smile, Dominic said quietly as we walked out of the building into the cold morning air. People will expect us to look at least somewhat happy. I tried. I'm sure it looked more like a grimace. His driver was waiting with a black Mercedes. Dominic opened the door for me, a gentlemanly gesture that felt rehearsed but not unkind. We're not going back to the gallery today, he said as we pulled into traffic. I'm taking you to your new home. You'll need time to settle in before Lucia's surgery tomorrow. Tomorrow. Lucia's surgery was tomorrow. The reminder made my chest tighten with a mix of relief and terror. The penthouse was in a sleek glass tower in Tribeca, overlooking the Hudson River. The elevator required a key card to access the top floor, the entire top floor, which was Dominic's. No, our apartment. When the doors opened directly into the foyer, I stopped breathing for a moment. Floor-to-ceiling windows wrapped around the entire space, offering panoramic views of the city and the river. The floors were polished concrete, warmed by expensive rugs. The furniture was minimalist but clearly designer, all clean lines and neutral tones. Modern art hung on the walls, pieces I recognized from the gallery, each worth more than my childhood home. It was beautiful. It was also completely intimidating. Your room is this way, Dominic said, leading me down a hallway. He opened a door to reveal a bedroom that was bigger than my entire apartment in the Bronx. A king-sized bed with pristine white linens. A sitting area with a velvet couch. A walk-in closet that was already filled with clothes. My size, various styles, all still tagged. I had my assistant order some basics, he explained. If you don't like any of it, you can return or exchange whatever you want. There's a credit card in your name on the dresser. No limit. Use it for whatever you need. I walked to the window, looking out at the river. A boat was passing underneath, leaving a trail of white wake. Where's your room? At the other end of the hall. Completely separate. You have privacy, Sophia. I meant what I said about boundaries. I turned to face him. In the natural light, I could see the fine lines around his eyes, the silver threading through his dark hair at his temples. He was handsome in a distinguished way, the kind of man who looked like he belonged in boardrooms and art galleries, not standing in a bedroom with a terrified 24-year-old girl he'd just married. Why are you really doing this? I asked. The truth, not the explanation you gave me in your office. He was quiet for a moment, considering. Then he walked to the window and stood beside me, both of us looking out at the city. My second wife left me 3 years ago, he said. The divorce was ugly. Very public, very expensive, very humiliating. She gave interviews about how cold I was, how I cared more about my companies than about her. Some of it was true. Some of it wasn't. but it damaged my reputation in certain circles, particularly in the art world, where relationships and social graces matter. He turned to look at me. I have business deals that require social credibility. Investors who want to see stability. Charity boards that prefer married members. In my world, Sophia, appearances matter almost as much as actual success. A single man my age is seen as a risk, unstable, unreliable, potentially scandalous. So I'm a prop, I said without bitterness. Just stating a fact. No, he said firmly. You're a partner. There's a difference. A prop is an object. A partner is someone who benefits from the arrangement as much as I do. He paused. I could have married any number of women my age from my social circle. Wealthy divorcees, socialites, women who know how to play the game. But they would have wanted things from me I'm not willing to give anymore. Emotional intimacy. Romance. Access to my inner life. And you think I won't want those things? I think you're honest enough to know what you signed up for, he said. And practical enough to understand that sometimes the most functional relationships are the ones based on mutual benefit rather than illusion. It was a depressing view of marriage, but I couldn't argue with the logic. I should let you rest, Dominic said, moving toward the door. Tomorrow is going to be a difficult day. Is there anything you need? Can I see my sister tonight? I asked. Before the surgery? Of course. I'll have my driver take you whenever you're ready. And Sophia? He paused in the doorway. The surgery is scheduled for 7 a.m. I'll be there. You don't have to. I'll be there, he repeated, in a tone that suggested the matter wasn't up for discussion. That evening, I sat beside Lucia's hospital bed, holding her small hand in mine. She looked so tiny in the big white bed, surrounded by monitors and 4 lines. But her eyes were bright when she saw me. Sophie, she smiled, and it broke my heart. Guess what? Mama says I'm getting my surgery tomorrow. The doctors say I'm going to be all better. That's right, Pequena, I said, brushing her dark hair back from her forehead. You're going to be so strong and healthy. Mama said an angel helped us, Lucia said, her voice dropping to a whisper like she was sharing a secret. Is that true? Did an angel give us the money? I thought about Dominic, this cold, practical businessman who'd married me like signing a contract. An angel seemed like the wrong word. But then again, what else do you call someone who saves a life? Something like that, I said softly. I'm scared, Lucia admitted, her hand tightening around mine. I know, baby. But I'm going to be right here when you wake up. I promise. Will the angel be there too? I smiled despite myself. Yes, the angel will be there too. True to his word, Dominic was in the surgical waiting room at 6:30 a.m., impeccably dressed even at that hour, holding 2 cups of coffee from the hospital cafeteria. He handed one to me without a word. My mother arrived a few minutes later, her eyes red from crying. She looked at Dominic with an expression I couldn't quite read. Gratitude mixed with suspicion, relief mixed with resentment. Mrs. Morales, Dominic said, standing to greet her. I'm Dominic Ashford. It's good to meet you, though I wish it were under better circumstances. My mother took his offered hand, but didn't smile. You're the man who married my daughter. I am. To save my other daughter. Yes. I don't know whether to thank you or slap you, my mother said bluntly. To my surprise, Dominic smiled, a genuine smile I hadn't seen before. I'd probably feel the same way if I were in your position. Something in his honesty seemed to soften my mother slightly. She sat down next to me, taking my other hand. The surgery took 6 hours. 6 hours of staring at the walls, at the clock, at the double doors Lucia had disappeared through. 6 hours of worst-case scenarios playing in my head. 6 hours of the most profound fear I'd ever experienced. Dominic didn't leave. He sat in his chair, working quietly on his laptop, occasionally bringing us fresh coffee or water. He didn't make small talk or offer empty reassurances. He was just there, a steady, calm presence in the chaos. When the surgeon finally came out, still in his scrubs, my heart stopped. The surgery was successful, he said, and I collapsed into my mother's arms, sobbing with relief. She did beautifully. No complications. Her heart is functioning perfectly. She'll need to stay in the ICU for a few days, but I expect a full recovery. Can we see her? My mother asked, tears streaming down her face. She's in recovery now. Another hour or so, and you can go in. After the doctor left, my mother turned to Dominic. Thank you, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I don't understand any of this, but thank you for giving me back my daughter. Dominic nodded. You don't need to thank me, Mrs. Morales. Sophia is the one who made the sacrifice. My mother looked at me, and in her eyes, I saw a complicated mix of emotions: pride, sadness, guilt, love. I know, she whispered. I know what my daughter gave up for us. The first weeks of living with Dominic were strange and awkward, like being a guest in a luxury hotel where you can't ever fully relax. We moved around the enormous penthouse like planets in separate orbits, crossing paths at breakfast, occasionally in the evenings, but mostly maintaining our own spaces and routines. He left for work early, usually before I woke up. I'd find a fresh pot of coffee waiting for me in the kitchen, along with whatever breakfast his housekeeper, Maria, had prepared. Maria was a kind woman in her 60s who'd worked for Dominic for over a decade. She spoke to me in Spanish when Dominic wasn't around, making me feel a little less alone. He's a good man, she told me one morning as I helped her fold laundry, a task she insisted I didn't need to do, but that I couldn't stop myself from doing. Cold on the outside, but not cruel. You could have done worse, Mija. I didn't do anything, I said. This isn't a real marriage. Maria gave me a knowing look. All marriages are real if you live them. The question is what kind of real they become. I spent most of my days at the hospital with Lucia during her recovery, and then visiting her at home once she was discharged. Dominic had arranged for a nurse to stay with my mother to help with Lucia's care, and had moved them from our cramped Bronx apartment to a modest but comfortable house in a better neighborhood. My mother had cried when she saw it. This is too much, she kept saying. This is too much. But Dominic had been firm. Your daughter is my wife. That makes you family. This is what family does. At night, I'd return to the penthouse exhausted, and often find Dominic in his study, working late. Sometimes I'd knock softly on his door. Come in, he'd say without looking up from his screen. Have you eaten? I'd ask. I'll order something later. There's pasta in the kitchen. Maria made too much. He'd finally look up, his reading glasses sliding down his nose. Is this going to become a thing? You mothering me? Someone has to, I'd say. When's the last time you had a meal that wasn't delivered or microwaved? Despite his protests, he'd eventually come to the kitchen. We'd sit at the large dining table that could seat 12, just the two of us at one end, eating Maria's pasta in a comfortable silence. These small moments became routine. I'd make sure he ate. He'd ask about Lucia's progress. We'd talk about art, about the gallery, about nothing important. We were learning each other's rhythms, like roommates rather than spouses. One evening about a month after the wedding, Dominic came home with a large wrapped package. This is for you, he said, setting it on the living room coffee table. I looked at him suspiciously. It's not my birthday. I'm aware. Just open it. I carefully unwrapped the brown paper to reveal a professional-grade drawing tablet, the kind I'd dreamed about owning when I was studying design, but could never afford. Dominic, this is too expensive. You're talented, he interrupted. I've seen your sketches. The ones you leave lying around, thinking no one notices. I felt my cheeks flush. I'd been doodling in my notebooks during Lucia's hospital stays, just to keep my hands busy. I hadn't realized anyone was paying attention. You gave up your education for your family, he continued. That was admirable but unnecessary now. I've enrolled you at Parsons School of Design for the spring semester. This is so you can practice until then. I stared at him, unable to speak. You fulfilled your end of our agreement, he said. Now I'm fulfilling mine. Your sister is safe. Your family is stable. It's time for you to have something for yourself. I don't know what to say. Thank you is traditional, I believe. I laughed, the first real laugh I'd had in weeks. Thank you, Dominic. He smiled, that rare genuine smile. You're welcome, Sophia. Our first public appearance as a married couple was at a charity gala for the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Dominic had warned me it would be scrutinized. He was well known in these circles, and showing up with a young wife would raise eyebrows. They're going to judge you, he said as we got ready. They're going to have opinions. Try not to let it bother you. Easy for you to say, I muttered, struggling with the zipper on the designer gown he'd had custom-made for me. You're not the one they'll call a gold digger. He appeared behind me in the mirror, gently moving my hands aside and zipping up the dress. His fingers were careful, professional. If anyone says anything inappropriate, tell me immediately. I won't tolerate disrespect toward you. The gala was overwhelming. Hundreds of people in expensive clothes, drinking expensive champagne, surrounded by priceless art. I felt like an imposter, a child playing dress-up. Dominic kept his hand on the small of my back as we moved through the crowd, a possessive gesture that looked romantic but felt protective. He introduced me to dozens of people whose names I immediately forgot, all of whom studied me with barely concealed curiosity. "So you're Dominic's new wife," one older woman said, her eyes traveling up and down my body. "How wonderful. And how did you two meet?" "At his gallery," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I worked there." "Oh," the word dripped with condescension. "How charming." I felt Dominic's hand tighten slightly on my back, a warning not to engage. But later, when we were alone at our table during dinner, I overheard a conversation from the table behind us. "She's half his age," a woman's voice said. "It's obscene." "Obviously a gold digger," another voice agreed. "I give it a year before she divorces him and takes half." Poor Dominic. First Elena, now this. He has terrible taste in women. I felt my face burn with shame and anger. I wanted to turn around and defend myself, to tell them they knew nothing about me or my situation. But what would I say? That I'd married him for money to save my dying sister? That would only confirm their worst assumptions. Dominic leaned close, his lips near my ear. "Ignore them. They're not worth your energy." "They think I'm using you," I whispered back. "I know. Let them think whatever they want. I know the truth. You know the truth. That's all that matters." But it did matter. It mattered that everywhere we went, I saw those judging eyes. It mattered that I couldn't go to the gallery anymore without people whispering. It mattered that I felt like I was wearing a scarlet letter that said, "Bought and paid for." On the drive home, I was quiet, staring out the window at the passing city lights. "You're upset," Dominic observed. "I'm fine. Sophia, I've learned to read you. You're not fine." I turned to look at him. "Do you ever regret this? Marrying me? Dealing with all the gossip and judgment?" He considered the question seriously. "No. Do you?" "I don't know," I admitted. "I saved Lucia. That's all that matters. But I didn't expect it to feel like this." "Like what?" "Like I sold my soul." Dominic was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something I wasn't expecting. "Tomorrow night, clear your schedule. No hospital visit. No studying. I'm taking you somewhere." "Where?" "You'll see." The next evening, Dominic took me to a place I never expected. A small, unassuming art studio in Brooklyn, hidden away on the third floor of an old industrial building. "What is this?" I asked as he unlocked the door with a key he pulled from his pocket. "My secret," he said simply, flipping on the lights. The space was filled with canvases, some finished, most in progress. Paint-splattered drop cloths covered the floor. The smell of oil paint and turpentine hung in the air. And everywhere I looked there was art. Raw, emotional, beautiful art. "You paint," I said, stunned. "I used to," he corrected, walking to a canvas covered with a sheet. "Before the tech company took off. Before the money and the galleries and the business deals. I wanted to be an artist, Sophia. A real one, not a collector." He pulled the sheet off, revealing a massive painting of a stormy seascape. All dark blues and grays and whites, violent and beautiful at once. "This is incredible," I breathed, moving closer. "Why did you stop?" "Because being an artist doesn't pay the bills," he said with a bitter laugh. "I was good but not great. Not successful enough to make a living. So I did what practical people do. I gave it up and built a software company instead. Made my fortune. And somewhere along the way, I forgot why I wanted the money in the first place." He walked to a small table in the corner where several framed photographs sat. He picked one up and brought it to me. A young Dominic, maybe in his 20s, with longer hair and paint on his hands, standing next to a beautiful dark-haired woman. Both of them were laughing. "That's Anya," he said softly. "My first wife. We met in art school. She was a sculptor. Brilliant, passionate, completely impractical. We were broke and in love, and convinced we could change the world with our art. What happened? Reality happened. We couldn't pay rent. We couldn't afford food sometimes. She got pregnant, and we were terrified but excited. Then she miscarried at 5 months. His voice caught slightly. The medical bills destroyed us. I had to make a choice, keep chasing the dream and risk losing everything, or give it up and build something stable. He set the photo down carefully. So I built the company. I made money. I gave Anya everything she could want, a house, security, comfort. But somewhere in all of that, I stopped being the man she fell in love with. She left me for a photographer. Someone who still had passion, still had that fire I'd lost. I couldn't even blame her. I didn't know what to say. This vulnerable, honest Dominic was so different from the controlled businessman I'd married. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked quietly. Because you said you felt like you sold your soul, he said, turning to face me. I want you to understand that I know exactly what that feels like. I sold mine 25 years ago, and I've spent every day since then trying to buy back pieces of it. He gestured to the studio. This is where I come when the world gets too small. When the board meetings and the contracts and the networking become suffocating. I come here and I paint. Not for galleries. Not for sale. Just for me. Can I see more? I asked. He hesitated, then nodded. For the next hour, he showed me his work. Landscapes and abstracts, portraits and still lives. Each one revealing something about him he'd never shown the world. His grief. His loneliness. His search for something he couldn't name. These should be in galleries, I said, standing in front of a particularly stunning piece. An abstract that somehow captured the feeling of isolation despite being just colors and shapes. No, he said firmly. These are mine. The moment I sell them, they become commodities. They become part of the game. I need something that stays pure. I understood completely. It was the same reason I'd stopped drawing when I had to work at the gallery. When your art becomes about survival, it stops being art. Will you paint with me? He asked suddenly. What? Now? Why not? There's an empty canvas. Fresh paint. No one to judge or criticize. Just creation for the sake of creation. I haven't painted since high school, I protested. Neither had I for a long time. Come on. Consider it therapy. So we painted. Side by side, on separate canvases in companionable silence. I was terrible at first, my hand cramped and uncertain. But slowly, something loosened inside me. The stress of the past months, the weight of judgment, the complexity of our arrangement, it all flowed out through my brush. I don't know how long we were there. Time became irrelevant. It was just color and movement and the simple joy of making something without expectations. When we finally stopped, it was past midnight. My canvas was a chaotic mess of emotions, reds and purples and blacks all crashing together. His was a figure, abstract but definitely human, reaching toward something just out of frame. We should do this again, he said, cleaning his brushes. You're welcome here anytime. I'll give you a key. Dominic, I said, suddenly emotional. Thank you for showing me this, for trusting me with it. He looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. You're my wife, Sophia. That means something to me, even if it's not traditional. It means I trust you with the parts of me I don't show anyone else. Something shifted between us that night. We were still business partners, still two people in an arranged marriage. But we were also becoming something else. Something that didn't have a name yet. The turning point came 2 months later, at Lucia's 9th birthday party. We'd thrown her a celebration at my mother's new house. Nothing extravagant, just family and a few of her school friends. Lucia was completely recovered, running around with energy that made my mother cry happy tears. Her surgical scar was barely visible, and her color was healthy and pink. Dominic had insisted on coming, even though I'd told him he didn't have to. She's my sister-in-law, he'd said. Of course I'm coming. I watched him from across the backyard, this formal businessman sitting on the grass with my little sister, helping her open presents. He'd brought her a professional art set, markers, colored pencils, sketchbooks, the works. Is that for me? Lucia gasped, her eyes huge. Sophia tells me you like to draw, he said. Every artist needs proper supplies. Lucia threw her arms around his neck without hesitation, the way children do when they haven't learned to guard their hearts yet. Thank you, Mr. Dominic. You're the best. I saw something cross his face, surprise, then something softer. His arms came up awkwardly to hug her back, and his eyes found mine across the yard. Later, after the party, after we'd cleaned up and said our goodbyes, Dominic was quiet on the drive home. You okay? I asked. She hugged me, he said, his voice oddly strained. I saw. No one's hugged me like that in. I don't even remember how long. I reached over and took his hand without thinking. He looked down at our joined hands in surprise, but didn't pull away. She loves you, I said. You saved her life. You're her hero. I just paid for a surgery. No, I said firmly. You gave her a future. You gave my mother peace. You gave me hope. That's not nothing, Dominic. That's everything. His hand tightened around mine. We drove the rest of the way home like that, holding hands in the dark, something unspoken shifting between us. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Dominic's face when Lucia hugged him. The vulnerability I'd seen there. The loneliness. Around 2 a.m., I gave up on sleep and went to the kitchen for water. I was surprised to find Dominic there, sitting at the counter in his pajamas. The first time I'd seen him in anything but a suit. "Can't sleep either?" I asked. He shook his head. "Too much cake, I think." I smiled and sat down next to him. "You were good with her today." "With Lucia." I didn't know what I was doing. That's what made it perfect. You weren't performing or managing. You were just there. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I envy your family. The way you love each other. No conditions, no transactions. Just love." It wasn't always easy, I admitted. When my dad left, when the money got tight, when Lucia got sick, there were times I resented all of it. The burden, the responsibility, the way my life wasn't my own anymore. "Do you resent this?" he asked, gesturing between us. "Our arrangement?" I thought about it honestly. In the beginning, yes. I felt trapped. Bought. Like I'd sacrificed myself on an altar to save everyone else. And now, I paused, trying to find the right words. Now I think maybe we saved each other. He turned to look at me fully. In the dim kitchen light, his eyes were softer than I'd ever seen them. "Sophia," he said quietly, "I need you to know something. This marriage, it started as a transaction, yes. But somewhere along the way, it became something else for me. You've become someone I look forward to coming home to. Someone whose opinion I value. Someone who makes this apartment feel less empty." My heart was pounding. "Dominic, I'm not asking for anything," he interrupted quickly. "I'm not trying to change our agreement. I just wanted you to know that you matter to me. As a person. Not as a wife on paper, but as Sophia. The woman who makes sure I eat. Who paints terrible abstract art in my studio at midnight. Who cares about her family more than anything. You matter to me." I felt tears prick my eyes. "You matter to me too," I whispered. "More than I expected. More than I was prepared for." "What do we do with that?" he asked. "I don't know," I admitted. "But maybe we don't have to figure it out tonight. Maybe we just let it be what it is." He nodded slowly. "Okay, we let it be what it is." But the next morning, I woke up to find a note slipped under my bedroom door. "Coffee's on. There's a new commission for the gallery I'd like your input on. Also, would you like to have dinner tonight? Not because we have to. Just because I'd like to. D." I smiled and tucked the note into my journal. Whatever we were becoming, it was happening slowly, carefully, like two people learning to trust that the ground beneath them was solid. 3 months into our marriage, Dominic's ex-wife appeared. Elena Ashford, now Elena Cavendish after remarrying, was everything I wasn't. Sophisticated, polished from old money, and absolutely furious that Dominic had moved on. She showed up at the gallery on a Tuesday afternoon, sweeping in like a storm in a designer coat and heels that cost more than a car. I was in the back office reviewing inventory when I heard her voice. "Where is he? Where's Dominic?" I came out to find her confronting our gallery director, her perfectly made-up face twisted with anger. "Mrs. Cavendish," the director said nervously. "Mr. Ashford isn't here today. Perhaps if you called his office." "Don't patronize me, Derek. I know he comes here." "I know." She stopped abruptly when she saw me. Her eyes narrowed. You're her. The child bride. Sophia Ashford," I said, keeping my voice level despite my racing heart. "Can I help you with something?" She laughed, a sharp, cruel sound. "Help me? You? That's rich. Tell me, how much did he pay you?" "Excuse me?" "To marry him. To play house. To pretend you're not just a bought accessory. How much was your dignity worth?" The gallery had gone silent. Everyone was watching. I felt my face burn with humiliation and anger. "I think you should leave," I said quietly. "I'm sure you do. Can't have anyone pointing out the truth, can we? That you're just a gold digger who saw a vulnerable, lonely man and took advantage." "That's enough," a firm voice said from behind me. Dominic had appeared, his face like stone. He moved to stand beside me, his hand finding the small of my back, that protective gesture I'd come to know. "Elena," he said coldly, "you need to leave. Now." "Oh, so you're defending her?" Elena's voice rose higher. "This child who's clearly using you? What's wrong, Dominic? Getting too old to attract women your own age? Had to buy yourself a pretty young thing to make yourself feel relevant. The only person who ever used me was you," Dominic said, his voice cutting. "You, who maxed out credit cards I didn't know about. You, who had an affair with my business partner while we were still married. You, who went to the press with lies because you were angry I wouldn't give you more in the divorce settlement." Elena's face went red. "How dare you? Sophia has shown me more genuine care in 3 months than you did in 5 years of marriage, Dominic continued. She makes sure I eat. She asks about my day. She cares whether I'm happy or just successful. So yes, I'm defending her. Because unlike you, she's actually worth defending. You'll regret this, Elena hissed, her voice venomous. Both of you. I'll make sure everyone knows what a pathetic, desperate man you've become. And you, she turned to me. I'll make sure the whole city knows exactly what you are. Do your worst, Dominic said flatly. Now get out of my gallery before I call security. Elena left in a whirlwind of expensive perfume and rage, slamming the door hard enough to make the artwork rattle. The silence that followed was deafening. I'm sorry, I said quietly. I didn't mean to. Don't apologize, Dominic said, turning to face me. His face was still tight with anger, but his eyes were gentle. She's bitter and vindictive. None of that was your fault. But the damage was done. Elena made good on her threat. Within days, gossip columns were running stories. Tech mogul's desperate marriage. The gallery girl who captured a billionaire. Is Dominic Ashford being taken for a ride? The stories portrayed me as a manipulative seductress, and him as a pathetic fool. My photo was published next to his, with age differences and net worth calculations. People I'd never met were commenting on my character, my motives, my worth as a human being. I stopped going to the gallery. Stopped going anywhere public. I felt like I was drowning in judgment and speculation. One particularly brutal evening, after reading yet another hit piece that called me a professional opportunist, I broke down in my room. I sat on my bed, sobbing, feeling like the whole world hated me, like I'd made a terrible mistake that I could never undo. There was a soft knock on my door. Sophia? Can I come in? I wanted to say no. I wanted to hide and pretend I was fine. But I was so tired of pretending. It's open, I said, my voice thick with tears. Dominic came in, and I saw something on his face I'd never seen before, genuine distress. Not the controlled businessman. Not the collected art collector. Just a man who was worried. He sat on the edge of my bed, a respectful distance away. Talk to me. I can't do this, I said, the words tumbling out. I can't live like this. With everyone thinking the worst of me. With every move I make being scrutinized and judged. With people writing articles about how I'm ruining your life. I'm suffocating, Dominic. I know, he said softly. And I'm sorry. I never wanted this to hurt you. Maybe they're right, I said, wiping my eyes. Maybe I am just a gold digger. Maybe I did take advantage of you. What kind of person marries someone for money, even if it is to save their sister? Sophia, look at me. I met his eyes and was startled by the intensity one saw there. You did what you had to do to save someone you love, he said fiercely. That doesn't make you a gold digger. That makes you a hero. A sister who would sacrifice anything. And anyone who can't see that doesn't matter. But they're destroying your reputation. I don't care about my reputation, he interrupted. I care about you. I care that you're suffering because of a decision I asked you to make. And I won't let them keep doing this. What are you going to do? Fight back, he said simply. No more silence. No more taking the high road. If they want a war, they'll get one. The next morning, Dominic called a press conference. I didn't know about it until I saw him getting ready, putting on his most authoritative suit, the one he wore for serious business meetings. What are you doing? I asked, confused. Taking control of the narrative, he said, adjusting his tie in the mirror. And you're coming with me. Dominic, no. I can't face those reporters. I can't. He turned to face me, taking both my hands in his. Sophia, I need you to trust me. Can you do that? I looked into his eyes and saw something that made my heart skip. Determination. Yes, but also something deeper. Protection. Partnership. Maybe even. No, I couldn't let myself think that. Okay, I whispered. I trust you. The press conference was held at Dominic's corporate headquarters, in a conference room filled with journalists and photographers. I stood beside him at the podium, my hands shaking despite his reassuring presence next to me. Thank you all for coming, Dominic began, his voice commanding the room. I've called you here because I'm tired of watching lies spread about my wife and our marriage. So let me be very clear about a few things. The cameras flashed. Reporters leaned forward. Sophia and I married 3 months ago. Yes, there's an age difference. Yes, she worked at my gallery. Yes, our courtship was brief. But let me tell you what the gossip columns won't. Sophia married me to save her sister's life. A murmur went through the crowd. I felt my face flush, but Dominic's hand found mine under the podium. Her 12-year-old sister needed emergency heart surgery that her family couldn't afford. Sophia was working 2 jobs, sending every penny home, and it still wasn't enough. So when I offered her a solution, marriage in exchange for her sister's medical care, she accepted. Not because she's a gold digger. Not because she's an opportunist. But because she loved her sister more than she loved her pride. He turned to look at me, and the expression on his face made my breath catch. What the articles won't tell you is that Sophia makes me dinner when I work too late. That she donates most of her allowance to medical charities. That she's enrolled in design school to finish the degree she gave up to support her family. That she's kind to every person she meets, regardless of their status. That she's made my house feel like a home for the first time in a decade. His voice softened. What they won't tell you is that I'm the lucky one in this arrangement. Not her. Me. The room erupted in questions, but Dominic held up his hand. My ex-wife has been spreading false narratives because she's bitter about our divorce. That's her right. But what's not acceptable is attacking a young woman who made a brave, selfless choice to save her family. Sophia has more integrity in her little finger than most people in this room, myself included. He looked directly at the cameras. So here's my message to anyone writing these hit pieces. Come after me all you want. Question my judgment. Question my decisions. But leave my wife alone. She didn't ask for any of this attention. She just asked for her sister to live. Then he did something I never expected. He turned to me fully, took both my hands, and said, Sophia, I know this isn't what we planned. I know this marriage started as a transaction. But somewhere along the way, you've become the most important person in my life. And I won't stand by and watch the world tear you apart. I was crying openly now, not caring that dozens of cameras were capturing every moment. Are you in love with your wife, Mr. Ashford? Someone shouted from the crowd. Dominic didn't hesitate. Yes, I am. The room exploded. Questions flew from every direction. But I barely heard them. All I could hear was those 3 words, echoing in my head. Yes, I am. The press conference went viral within hours. The narrative shifted overnight. Suddenly we weren't the creepy older man and the gold-digging young woman. We were the unlikely love story. The man who fell for the woman he married out of convenience. The woman who sacrificed everything for family. Of course, not everyone believed it. There were still skeptics, still critics. But the tide had turned. That night, back at the penthouse, I found Dominic in his study, staring out the window at the city lights. Did you mean it? I asked quietly from the doorway. He turned to look at me. Mean what? What you said at the press conference. About being in love with me. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I've never lied to you, Sophia. I'm not going to start now. When? I asked, moving into the room. When did it happen? He smiled slightly. I don't think it was a single moment. It was 1,000 small moments. The first time you made me turn off my laptop and eat dinner like a normal person. The night you showed me your terrible abstract painting and weren't embarrassed by it. The way you talk about your sister with so much love it hurts to listen. The way you fell asleep on the couch reading, and I put a blanket over you, and you smiled in your sleep. He moved closer to me. The way you see me as a person, not as a bank account or a business opportunity. The way you call me out when I'm being cold or distant. The way you make me want to be better than I am. Dominic, I whispered, my heart pounding. I'm scared. Of what? Of this. Of feeling too much. Of getting hurt. Of this becoming real and then losing it. He reached out and gently cupped my face in his hands. I'm scared too. I've been divorced twice. I've been used and betrayed. Every instinct I have tells me to protect myself, to keep distance, to never let anyone close enough to hurt me again. Then why aren't you? Because you're worth the risk, he said simply. Because for the first time in 20 years, I'm not just going through the motions of life. I'm actually living it. And that's because of you. I couldn't hold back anymore. I closed the distance between us and kissed him. It wasn't the passionate, desperate kiss of romance movies. It was gentle, tentative questioning. A kiss that asked, is this okay? Are we doing this? Are we really doing this? His arms came around me, pulling me closer, and the kiss deepened. When we finally pulled apart, we were both breathing hard. I think I'm falling in love with you too, I admitted. I didn't want to. I tried not to. But I am. What do we do now? He asked, his forehead resting against mine. I don't know, I said honestly. We figure it out together? Together, he agreed. The next 6 months were a revelation. We renegotiated our arrangement, not legally, but emotionally. The separate bedrooms remained, but only because the transition felt too fast otherwise. We took things slowly, learning how to be married for real, not just on paper. Dominic started leaving work earlier. We'd cook dinner together, or more accurately, I'd cook while he kept me company and did the dishes. We'd watch movies on the couch, my head on his shoulder. We'd spend weekends at his studio, painting side by side, or visiting my family, where Lucia had decided Dominic was the best thing that ever happened to us. He's like a fairy godfather, she told me one day, completely serious. Except he's real, and he married you instead of disappearing at midnight. My mother, who'd been suspicious at first, slowly warmed to him. The turning point came when Dominic spent an entire Sunday helping her plant a garden at her new house, getting dirt under his expensive manicured nails without complaint. He's good for you, Mija, she told me as we watched him struggle with a stubborn rosebush. I see it in your eyes. You're happy. I was happy. Genuinely, surprisingly happy. I threw myself into my design studies at Parsons, discovering that I was actually talented when I had the time and resources to develop my skills. Dominic would stay up late helping me with projects, offering feedback from an artist's perspective, even when he didn't fully understand the digital design aspects. This is brilliant, he'd say, looking at my work. You're going to be incredible at this. You have to say that. You're my husband. I'm saying it because it's true, and because I know talent when I see it. He started introducing me differently at events, not as my wife Sophia, but as Sophia Ashford, designer. He treated my work with the same seriousness he treated his business deals, and that validation meant more than he could know. One evening, about 8 months into our marriage, we were sitting on the penthouse balcony watching the sunset over the Hudson. I was curled up in his arms, feeling completely content. "Can I ask you something?" he said quietly. "Always. What happens in 4 years?" I knew what he meant. Our contract. The 5-year agreement with the option to divorce and the $10 million settlement. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Do you want out?" "God, no," he said immediately. "I'm asking because I want to know if you do. If you're counting down the days until you're free." I turned in his arms to face him. "Dominic, I stopped thinking about that contract months ago. This stopped being a business arrangement the night you told the world you loved me. So you'll stay? After the 5 years? Not for the money, but because you want to." "I'll stay," I said, "if you want me to. Not because of a contract or an agreement. Because I love you. Because this weird, impossible arrangement turned into the best thing that ever happened to me." He kissed me then, long and deep, and I felt something settle in my chest. A certainty. A sense of home. "I want to show you something," he said when we pulled apart. He led me inside to his study, where he pulled out a velvet box from his desk drawer. "What is this?" I asked. "Open it." Inside was a ring, not my simple wedding band, but a stunning engagement ring with a sapphire surrounded by diamonds. "Dominic, I never proposed to you properly," he said, taking the ring out of the box. "You never got the romance, the choice, the moment that every woman deserves. So I'm doing it now. Not because of a contract, not because of an arrangement, but because I want to." He got down on one knee, and I started crying. "Sophia Morales Ashford, will you marry me? Again. For real this time. Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that this wasn't a mistake or a transaction, but the best decision either of us ever made?" "Yes," I sobbed. "Yes, of course, yes." He slid the ring on my finger next to my wedding band, and then he stood and kissed me like we were sealing a promise. A real one this time. One built on love instead of necessity. 2 years later, I stood in my own gallery opening. Morales Designs was a small but elegant space in Chelsea, showcasing my work, a blend of traditional art and digital design that had become my signature. The opening was packed with collectors, designers, and art enthusiasts, all there to see what Dominic called the future of visual storytelling. Dominic stood beside me, his hand in mine, beaming with pride. "Nervous?" he asked. "Terrified," I admitted. "You're going to be amazing. You already are." Lucia ran up to us, now a healthy, energetic 14-year-old with dreams of becoming a doctor. "Sophie, someone just bought 3 of your pieces. Big ones." My mother followed behind her, elegant in a dress Dominic had helped her pick out, no longer worn down by double shifts and worry. She hugged me tightly. "Your father would be so proud," she whispered. It was the first time she'd mentioned him in years without bitterness. "I'm so proud. As the evening wore on, as people admired my work and asked questions and made connections, I found myself stepping away to catch my breath. Dominic found me on the gallery's small back balcony, looking out at the city lights. "Hiding from your own success?" he teased. "Just taking it in," I said. "Thinking about how different everything is from 3 years ago." "Do you regret it?" "Any of it." I thought about that night in the hospital chapel, desperately trying to find a way to save Lucia. I thought about signing that contract with shaking hands. I thought about the judgment, the gossip, the pain of those early months. "Not for a second," I said. "Every hard moment led me here. To this life. To you. To becoming someone I never imagined I could be." "I was so certain I knew what I needed," Dominic said, pulling me close. "A practical arrangement. A business partnership. Something clean and simple with no messy emotions. And instead you got me," I laughed. "Very messy emotions." "I got everything I didn't know I was missing," he corrected. "A home. A family. Someone who sees past the money and the success to the person underneath. Someone who makes me want to paint again, to dream again, to feel again." "We saved each other," I said softly. "We did," he agreed. "People ask me sometimes if I ever think about the money. About the $10 million I could have walked away with after 5 years. About whether I stayed for the wrong reasons. I tell them I stopped counting money the day Lucia came out of surgery with a healthy heartbeat. I stopped caring about settlements the day Dominic looked at me like I was the most valuable thing in his world. I stopped worrying about contracts the day I realized I'd married my best friend, my partner, my home. Did I marry a 52-year-old billionaire to save my sister's life? Yes. Did I sell my future for money? Some would say yes. But here's what they don't understand. I didn't sell my future. I traded one future for another. I let go of the life I'd planned, the safe, predictable path, and stepped into something uncertain, terrifying, and completely unexpected. And in that uncertainty, I found everything I'd been looking for without knowing I was searching. Love isn't always about romance and passion and dramatic declarations. Sometimes it's about two broken people finding each other in impossible circumstances and deciding to build something real from the wreckage of their separate lives. Sometimes it's about a business arrangement that turns into late-night conversations. About shared silences that feel more intimate than words. About someone who sees your worst moments and chooses to stay anyway. Sometimes love is practical and inconvenient and complicated and messy. And sometimes it's absolutely perfect. My name is Sophia Ashford. I'm 27 years old. I'm a designer, a sister, a daughter, and a wife. I married a man I barely knew to save my family. And in doing so, I saved myself. Life rarely gives us the story we expect. But sometimes the story we get is better than anything we could have imagined. If you connected with my story, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever made an impossible choice that changed your life? Share your story below. I read every comment. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss these real-life stories that remind us we're not alone in our struggles. And remember, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is accept help, even when it comes from the most unexpected place. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.